A trip to Rocky Top before an emotional return to the Palace on the Prairie. News from the ACC and a visit with UNLV head coach Barry Odom. This is the College Game Day podcast. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel here. Pete, yesterday I went to Knoxville to speak with Josh Heupel for a story on College Game Day Saturday morning about his return to Oklahoma, which is multi-layered, as you know. National championship winning quarterback there. Offensive coordinator who had great success with some of their early star quarterbacks, Sam Bradford, Jason White, for instance, and then was fired in 2014, one that has created a bit of a rift, a large rift, chasm, as it were, between Heupel and Bob Stoops, which seems to have closed a bit. As you know very well from writing pieces on Josh over the years, friendly enough guy, not terribly introspective publicly. So, not eager to talk about these things, but
putting it
I do think
mildly,
that,
Rece.
yeah, I do think
a wonderful guy, but not.
No,
if you got Josh Heupel to open up and cry, you should be the new Barbara Walters.
Well, I did not. But I do think that there were some answers that are revealing that will show. Sometimes if you listen closely to an answer, you get the subtext without the detail. And I think there was some of that. There's not an effusive outpouring of emotion, but also I think very insightful from some of the things he's learned. And most of it, I think, speaks to why he's been a successful coach, because even if he started to gravitate toward an area of nostalgia, of looking back, he would quickly veer it back to, a lot of great memories, but a big opportunity and experience for our team right now. And even the players, I taught several players last year. He hasn't brought it up much. But the one thing that I think will be evident on Saturday night, Pete, is the players, even if Josh hasn't said anything, the players are acutely aware of what it would mean. But even them, I don't know if they've been coached or just had heard it from hype so much that they would start, a couple of them, then they'd come back and go, but he really hasn't said much about it. We're just going to try to win a game. So, but it was an interesting thing, and I enjoyed the visit, and I look forward to for everybody to see the piece on Saturday morning.
And I think this is one of the things that makes college sports unique, Rece, right? Like the connection of a Josh Heupel to a place like Oklahoma. Comes in as a JUCO, leads him to a national title. He's a Heisman runner-up. He's, as an iconic elite player. I was told he's one of the next ones up to be in their Hall of Fame. Like he's that caliber of player. And then that gets severed when Bob Stoops fires him. And just those two emotional lightning rods, right? Like all that was built up and then all that was blown up and then coming together on Saturday in this venue. I think it's really fascinating theater. You're not going to get much, I think, emotion wise from Josh Heupel, not you, anybody, until that game ends. And if there's a crooked number on the scoreboard for the Vols, I think the moment may be the revealer for Josh Heupel, because I've plumed that ground in the past, because obviously when he got hired as a head coach, it was a great redemption story. Remember, he and Jay Norvell got fired, and both of them at the same time from Bob Stoops on that Oklahoma staff, and both of them have turned out to be incredible coaches. I'd be remiss if I didn't shoehorn in my favorite Josh Heupel fact. So he goes to Utah State. Talk about a drop, right? You have top 10 offenses, goes to Utah State. Matt Wells throws him a lifeline. And is there 1 year, I think Joey Halsey actually went with him, who's his OC now.
He did. I saw Joey yesterday. He did.
As his QC. And he recruits a player from Bakersfield, California, who had 0 FBS offers. Gentleman by the name of Jordan Love. So no matter how good Nico becomes, he's got a long way to go to take over for the best player Josh Heupel's recruited. Talk about a nice parting gift. Hey, Wellesley, sorry I got to leave you for Missouri. Yeah. But here's a first round pick who's gonna go make a $500 million in the NFL. I always thought that is like a valuation, right? I think a lot of quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators can watch the top 5 guys and pick the best one. But if you can go from the whole laundry list and pluck one, and he becomes that good, that says a lot about his evaluation skills.
You'll probably hear some variation of this in my lead on Saturday to the Heupel piece about the difficulty being the head coach at your alma mater. I was thinking about this on the flight back. For every Kirby Smart, there's a Scott Frost or a Mike DeBose or a Ray Goff. For every Mike Gundy, there's a Barry Odom. Sometimes it finds success elsewhere. Some of the other guys disappear and are never heard from again, and it's a real emotional thing that they don't even get their careers back on track. So what Josh has accomplished, and what our guest coming up in a few minutes, Barry Odom, has accomplished is a difficult thing to do, because everybody talks about the college ties being lifelong, and when they're injured, it's tough to come back from. And Josh has done a great job of it. So has Barry, who we'll talk to about other things than that. That this is going to be more of a UNLV conversation. Before we get to that, though, there's some news, maybe some type of extended olive branch between Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC. Where do we stand there, Pete?
Yeah, so some news broke last night, Rece, and again, I was cautioned that it wasn't even necessarily a proposal
from Florida State and Clemson to the ACC that the presidents had. It was more of a concept, and the concept is pretty simple. It basically says if the ACC re-engages on how they distribute revenue, i.e., through the prism of television ratings, through the prism of media exposure, i.e., giving more money to Florida State and Clemson and others, but mostly them. Basketball ratings come into play too, so I'm sure that would help Carolina and Duke along the way, that the lawsuits would be dropped. And the key to all this is that they would be let out of the grant of rights for the ACC by 2030, which would essentially give them free agency without the legal haymakers and position them when the Big Ten and SEC contracts are set to expire to potentially join one of those leagues. So it would essentially prioritize their free agency and get them back on schedule to leave without the millions in lawyers' fees and the ugliness. It would also give them a chance, and right now Clemson especially more than Florida State, to move on and to maybe win the ACC a couple times and get in the playoff. Because quite frankly, right now, neither of those programs are doing that in the SEC.
No, I'm not sure Florida State's going to do it in the ACC right now. They got the sturdy Golden Bears of Cal coming in this weekend. I think they're an underdog.
I don't even know if they'd win the AAC, Rece, from what we saw last weekend. So I don't think results have had anything to do with these conversations being expedited, although it's easy to be snarky when plaintiff 1 and plaintiff 2 have struggled out of the gate. I do think that there was always 3 paths, and we've talked about this on the pod, right? Path 1 was you fight the litigation. There's still 2-3 years left. That's ugly. Rarely do you see college sports entities in court. So that was never likely. Number 2 was just a pure, we give you $400 million hypothetical number. You let us go, like a pure resolution. And then this is like a negotiated resolution. And this was always the most likely path. Again, I was told probably months from happening, not anything imminent. The conversation itself is intriguing because it gives a little color into what that could look like. Now, the last point on this, Rece, is this becomes an interesting test for the bottom of the ACC. They have sort of resisted special favors for Florida State, Clemson, et cetera. And they have to decide whether they want to be on the gravy train until 2030 or like there's something more punitive that comes and happens. So it's an interesting test for those ACC teams that have been getting equal revenue all this time from that, whether or not they're going to be open to these incentives being passed.
So the one question I have about this, though, is how you mentioned Carolina Duke, it could help them in terms of basketball. How does it factor in if Jay Williams buys 49% of Duke basketball? Did you see that? Jay Will's a big idea guy. He's a huge idea guy. And so I think in this era of trying to find revenue streams, he did an interview with someone that was pointed out to me, actually was pointed out to me by Billis, in which he said he wanted to buy 49% of Duke basketball, to which I responded to Billis, did you tell him you weren't selling it to him? So we'll see. Well, I mean, I know where he's going. He's going with the whole, private equity, venture capital, all that kind of stuff is probably what he's thinking. Jay Will's a big idea guy now.
Billis had no snark when he brought that to you, I'm sure, right?
It was offered without comment.
Snark free.
It was offered without comment. It'll probably come up during game day basketball season. What's going to come up on the College Game Day podcast in a matter of moments? UNLV head coach Barry Odom will join the show. Welcome back to the College Game Day podcast. Joining us now is a man who's a standout linebacker at Missouri, top 10 in school's all-time tackles list, built his reputation as a defensive coordinator, putting together stingy ball-hawking units in various places. Became head coach at his alma mater, enjoyed some success at Missouri, and now in his second season at UNLV, reigning Mountain West Coach of the Year from last season, has the Rebels ranked in the coaches poll for the first time ever, moved to Division I in the late 70s, and just a hair outside the rankings in the AP, though not on my ballot. They were in the top 25. Pleased to have Barry Odom joining us now. Barry, congratulations on the great start. Already 2 wins against 2 Big 12 teams. I want to ask you a question from a defensive coordinator perspective from watching your team play. How come people can't tackle Matthew Sluka?
Great to see you guys. Honored to be on with you, and thanks for the job you do for college football. Sluka is, you go through fall camp and you think that you've got something out of position with the quarterback spot, and every time we got in a scrimmage situation, we never tackle our quarterbacks, but there were times that the defense was yelling, "Oh, he's down, he's sacked," out in open space, and the things that he was able to do extending runs. He's strong, he's elusive. I think he's a little faster than people give him credit for, and tremendous competitive spirit. We've been a really strong high school recruiting program. We signed 48 kids in our 2 cycles here, and then we're really select and direct and aggressive in the transfer world. And fortunately, some of the players that we have, on offense, Ricky White, Jacob DeJesus, they're guys that were in the program last year and returning impact players for us. We, up until, going back to last year, the ability to run the football has been so important to us. And you look at what we did last year on the line of scrimmage, and then some production that we had in the running back room coming back. We've got playmakers in a lot of different areas. I think we're just scratching the surface on what we can be on offense this year. We're getting a little bit more out of the quarterback run game. But I think, going back to the question, I think we've got an opportunity to have 4+ guys drafted in this year's draft.
It's a different and changing dynamic world in recruiting, as you alluded to, and you've brought in a lot of new guys. Kind of a twofold question here, which is breaking every tenet of interviewing. You should do one question at a time, but I think they do dovetail. What level can you compete from an NIL standpoint, both in the portal and more so in the portal, but also in high school? And what is the pitch now to come to Las Vegas combined with what NIL opportunities there are for players?
Well, you look at really in a city of 2.5 million people, the opportunities that are here for NIL and that market is better than most of the country. Now, the education piece that goes along with that, with the city, with the donors, on what that looks like, that's where I've spent a lot of my time on doing some of those things, because when we took over, there was that didn't exist here. So we started from ground up. We've built a very, very strong collective. You look at either high school development on kids, and the track record we have with that is really positive, but also whether a kid has a season or 2 seasons left in the transfer world, there's ending up here. It's a pretty good spot to end up. You're in Vegas, the sports mecca of the world. There's a lot of eyes on you. We know, and we're promoting 11 of our 12 games this year on national TV. 5 of them are on Friday night. So the eyes and the exposure are there. I think, always the number of stops that I'd been before, whether it's Missouri, Memphis, or Arkansas, I spot recruited Las Vegas. So I knew about the city. There's 36 high schools here. And if you look at in the NFL right now, the number of players that come from the city of Vegas is really, really high. So that is great. Now you've got to find a way to keep them home. And in last year's recruiting class, we signed 8 local high school kids, all really good players. We're creating the narrative on it's okay to stay home, and you should stay home because we're going to compete and win championships every single year.
Barry, realignment never stops. And I think when we first started talking about this, realignment wasn't even on our minds. Just give you a sense of where UNLV is right now with this Mountain West shakeup. And I'm sure recruits are asking you, like, what's the message moving forward on where UNLV goes forward in terms of conference affiliation?
It's amazing, Pete. I should write a book on realignment. And because I was at Memphis and we went Conference USA to the Big East, and then that dissolved back into, and we ended up in the American, and then was at Mizzou when we transitioned from the Big 12 to the SEC. So I feel like I've lived realignment now for the last 15 to 17 years. I don't know if it'll ever stop, as we all know, and it's something that the conversation piece is going to be always there. I think eventually maybe it will calm and settle when the conferences, grow to what they're going to become. But I think, for us, number one, I think the Mountain West brand, you look historically over the last 25 years is strong, and you look at the success that Boise has had on a national stage, or Fresno, or Air Force. And then for us to get in the championship game last year for the first time, and what UNLV is becoming, a very attractable group of teams. We got great coaches, really good players. We do have strong leadership in our commissioner in the Mountain West. It'll be interesting to see kind of what plays out. Obviously, we know the 4 teams last week made a decision that they were leaving. I do believe that we've got really strong leadership at UNLV. With our president and our athletics director. So the conversations that are taking place, I know that I've got to do my job on putting football in a position to be competitive on a national stage. And if you do that, then everything is going to take care of itself. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I know there's so many moving parts, and for us nationally, UNLV has got an opportunity to be on the national stage for a lot of years to come.
And an opportunity to be on the national stage this year with the advent of the new 12-team playoff. The 5 highest ranked conference champions get an automatic bid in there. And with 2 wins over a Big 12 team, and with an ACC team that's off to a good start in Syracuse coming up in a couple of weeks, got Oregon State on the road later. And I know you have to win the Mountain West, and that's the first priority. But with the opportunities that have presented themselves to teams outside those Power 4 conferences, and the ability that you guys have shown to win against teams from those conferences, what do you think the opportunity is that has been presented for your team if you can, in fact, go on and win the Mountain West this year?
It's amazing that the things that we talked about as a team in January through our Winning Edge program in the winter months, and then you get into spring ball. I'm very open about having those conversations with our team on what's out there. And, any competitive arena or an environment, I want to be the best, and I want our team to shoot for that. So for us, understanding now there's hope with the 12-team playoff, which there is for a lot of teams now. But it's exciting. I think it's great for the game of college football. But for us, we know that our margin of error is very, very slim. When it look in that context, we know that we have to win the conference championship. We understand that, and whoever wins our conference championship should have a seat at the table. So I looked at last year. Okay, we went to the championship game. We came up short. Had we won that game, where would have we ended up ranking wise, analytically, getting as much information as we can? We would have been just outside of that because of our strength of schedule. So how do you fix those problems? Well, you go schedule at Houston, you schedule at Kansas, you have Syracuse coming here, another Power 4 team, you go to Oregon State, then you don't leave it to chance. And we understand that our league is so strong. We have Fresno, we've got Boise coming up. There's a number of games that will be marquee games for us. And we understand if we take care of business every single week, then after the first week in December, we'll have a spot.
Barry, you have back-to-back home games coming up. You have Fresno, and then obviously the Syracuse game the following Friday, which you mentioned. Vegas loves a winner. Can you give us a sense of how the city has rallied around this hot start for UNLV?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, Pete, I was concerned about that a little bit when I took the job. Is there enough space for college football in Vegas? And the answer is a strong, resounding yes, there is. You've got to win, understand that. we built it last year, and towards the end of the year, the crowds were a true home field advantage. It gets really loud in Allegiant. We've only had one game this year, and you could already feel it. We set records for the number of students that took tickets this year for the first game. My guess is Fresno, we've got the bye, then Fresno will set an attendance record on the way that things are trending. And then a short week and a Friday night game for Syracuse. If we take care of business, that could be one of the great environments for a home field advantage that UNLV's ever seen.
What kind of stars from playing shows have come out to see UNLV? And if they haven't, who would you really like to see come out and be on the sidelines there with the Rebels?
We've put a lot of invites out, and we know that, and we're becoming a hot ticket. So the things that are in Vegas, from Formula One, the track's being built right down the street again for this year. You got everything that goes on in the sphere, UFC and all the fighters that are here, and the promotion. And then the artists, Guy Fieri had a quick tweet about his alma mater and the Rebels this week. So we need to get a little cooking demonstration on the sideline, have him out. My high school classmate, Blake Shelton, is here at times, and actually traded some messages with him last night. I'm trying to get him out for one of the games. And so it's part of being in Vegas. You've got opportunities with all the people that are here. We're trying to make it where they want to be part of UNLV.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your relationship with Blake Shelton a little bit. Were you guys tight in high school? Did you sing with him from time to time? Was he a good football player?
He was a year ahead of me in school, and he was on the football team. He always carried around his guitar, always, and we gave him a hard time. Like, hey, dude, give it up. Obviously, he knew something we didn't. But no, he's obviously had a great career, and what a great way that he's gone from music now to the social scene, and would love to get him for a game. That would be awesome.
And so many opportunities ahead for your team this year as well. Barry, congratulations on the great start. Great to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully, who knows, maybe even College Game Day on the Strip someday. That'd be cool.
We'll welcome you with open arms. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
I think Piro's had NIL before NIL was legal.
And that back room where Tark was.
It's kind of like the SEC did.
Yes, exactly.
Tark and the SEC ahead of their time. Barry, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Barry.
Take care.
Really appreciate you, man.
Back on the College Game Day podcast. Glad to have you with us, and looking ahead to the games this weekend. A lot of fascinating and compelling storylines, including in Austin on Saturday. The most revered name in quarterbacking will be on the field. And Arch Manning, too, as he squares off against General Booty in the Louisiana Monroe versus Texas game. So, General
Do you still
Booty,
have your General Booty t-shirt, Rece?
I probably have it someplace. But there's a lot of Arch fever this week. We're going to take a look at Arch, and understandably so. He is a gifted young quarterback. Sark has said that nothing changes as long as he's in for Quinn Ewers. What are you looking forward to seeing from Arch, assuming he gets to start, plays most of the game, at least until Texas has it well in hand?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, Rece. Arch Manning is very talented, and there's a lot of excitement around him. I will caution, even though he was a big-time recruit, that Arch Manning did not arrive in college ready-made. He was a year ago at this time, he was the third-string quarterback at Texas. So again, if he was this supernatural talent, unbelievably gifted, ascendant star that didn't have a learning curve, he would not have gotten beaten out by Malik Murphy. And he has never really challenged Quinn Ewers in any significant way to be the starter. So I just kind of want to see, where is Arch Manning right now? I don't think UTSA is very good. And I was surprised that he had that speed. And certainly the numbers were great. It was interesting. I was listening to our friend Cole Kublick's podcast, and he mentioned there were some mistakes by Arch Manning. There were some bad reads. He held the ball a little too long. Now, again, I think he threw the ball, 9 times and threw 4 touchdown passes or 9 completions. So, I mean, the production has been amazing. But I just think the sample set of a defense prepared for him, how do they confuse him? How do they move things around? Monroe is not going to threaten Texas, but they're better than Monroe has been in the past. And they're going to come in and throw some haymakers. So yeah, I'm just curious to see where we are in Arch Manning at this moment. We may get to see him again against Mississippi State. And then there's a bye, and Oklahoma's about a month away. Guessing here that Quinn Ewers probably be okay by the time a full month has lapsed for that ab/oblique injury. So yeah, I just think it will be one of the most overanalyzed backup quarterbacks against a Sun Belt team games we've seen in a while.
And then in the big house, quarterback change, Alex Orji going for Michigan. This is what many of us, myself included, no, I don't mean this as being disrespectful toward Davis Warren, who went out in the offseason, won the job. Good for him. But I think what we anticipated in the offseason was that Alex Orji would at some point be the starting quarterback for Michigan. USC comes in after the LSU win. Much higher expectations for those of us on the outside now after seeing what they perhaps are capable of. And a bit of a crossroads to whether Michigan's going to have a good season or likely headed toward, by their standards, a mediocre type season when the Trojans and Wolverines play in the big house, not the Rose Bowl. That'll be fascinating stage in and of itself on Saturday.
So this is a bridge year at quarterback for Michigan, and this is a byproduct of them being spoiled by their success. A year ago at this time, J.J. McCarthy going pro just wasn't a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. At least J.J. McCarthy being, I believe, 10th pick in the draft was not a conversation. He could have gone pro, but just he had not played to level. Even, in mid-November last year, people weren't, staunchly standing on the table. But look.
Well, he ran it 32 times in a row against Penn State or whatever it was,
yes,
know? So,
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So supposedly he had like one of the greatest pro days like in the history of the world. So again, that late surge combined with Jim Harbaugh's collegiate ambivalence as he was looking at the NFL left Michigan in flux a little bit here. So I really think that when you look at Michigan right now, they just kind of got caught, and they did make some portal/non-portal forays at the end of spring. And the unfortunate part for Alex Orji is the reason he's not the starter is he's very limited in the pass game. And I think we've seen that in the small sample size we've had of him. So it will be interesting to see if they go full on. We have a running quarterback who will occasionally pass and really just try to take a Penn State type game plan, shorten the game, run the ball, use them on third and short to run and do that. Davis Warren was the starting quarterback at Michigan because he gave them an element in the pass game that made it functional, but he's just simply not good enough to be Michigan's quarterback. Alex Orji, I'm obviously skeptical of. So I just think we're about to see Michigan sort of dawdle through the rest of this season and really arm up and gear up to get the best quarterback in the portal they can next year. You hope for the young men they can get better and improve and do that, but that is the path we are on. And also, I'm curious, Rece, is USC was impressive playing against LSU. They tackled well. They met the moment. LSU is not a top 10 team, right? Maybe like we would have thought in the preseason. So it'll be interesting to see. The Trojans have historically been a little bit like this. Texas has. How do they handle success? Do they just waltz in the big house and think they're going to win? Because Michigan still has some good players. Be interesting to see if Colson Loveland plays with that shoulder. He's their best weapon on offense. But still, Michigan's defensive talent, their tackles haven't played up to their billing, quite frankly. So when you look at Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham, Mason Graham is a little bit on the outside at times. They played him on the edge a little bit. So it will be, I have a hard time imagining USC just waltzing in and doing what Texas did. Let's put it that way.
And then let's look ahead briefly as we close to the first two opponents for USC in the 2025 season. The first 2 weeks of next season, they face teams that will square off on Saturday. Georgia Southern and the University of Mississippi, guided by former USC head coaches Lane Kiffin and Clay Helton. Kiff against Helton on the Grove, an eye for the first 2 weeks of 2025, according to the future schedules that I've seen. College football just keeps delivering, doesn't it? And by the way, if you like the upset, and I don't, Helton says he knows Lane Kiffin's tells. If he hears him whistle, he's changing plays. The way Ole Miss has played so far, that probably means he's just choosing another play to score a long touchdown. This has been the College Game Day podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can download the podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcast or subscribe and never miss an episode.